All right. What's happening, everyone? Welcome on into the Check Your Brain podcast. My name is Tony Mazur. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching this. If you're watching it, it's on Twitter or X, as well as Rumble and YouTube. And if you're listening to it, you may be on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So go check me out if you are listening for free. I appreciate it. I have a Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur, TonyMazur. And you get extra episodes and bonus solo content from me. But today, it's not just me. It is my guest, a returning guest who's been on the podcast about 2 years ago. And weirdly enough, the entire media landscape, it seems like, has been turned on its head since then, whether it's political landscape or social media landscape. And she is returning to the podcast. She's in the pantheon of return podcast guests to the Check Your Brain podcast. If you're watching this, there she is on Spotify. And it's my guest, Lisa Pasquale. Lisa, thank you for joining me once again.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Well, I have you on. Let's give the big sell with the book. It is out now, which is funny. I'm just saying this because we're recording this beforehand, but because it says pre-order on the site. But by the time people can watch this, you can go click and purchase. But if you so choose, go and purchase her new book. It's called The Gen X Handbook for Middle Age: The Pursuit of Health, Success, and Human Fulfillment. And first of all, Lisa, I see we can get this on Amazon. Is there another way? Do you have a website? I know you have a Substack as well.
My website's just my name.com, lisadiepasquale.com, but it is available wherever books are sold. So Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Target, BAM, they're still around. I don't think Borders is around anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
Borders is gone. Yeah, everybody kept talking about
wherever
open
books are
borders.
still sold.
They were talking about open borders the last couple of years, and I'm like, wait, you mean the bookstore where you could put the headphones on and listen? Anyways, but yeah, no, it's yeah, the Gen X handbook, because you also had another handbook called the SJW, or the Social Justice Warrior Handbook, and now
Yeah, this
you
one I'm
really,
actually part
it's
of.
your wheelhouse, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Handbooks are my wheelhouse. This one obviously isn't as much of a parody. There's some parts that are a parody, things like, um, meditation, using, quotes from John Bender from The Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
That was
Uh,
my Halloween costume, by the way. I was Bender.
did you buy it or did you make it from your own stuff?
I made it. I had the fingerless gloves from working out, and I bought a. I'm really bad with Halloween wigs, so this one looked very Karen. So instead of looking like John Bender and saying, does it, asking if Barry you rated Barry Manilow's wardrobe, it's me just looking like I'm about to protest at an HOA meeting.
Did you look like you drive a Subaru?
Little bit, yeah. I was with a big hatchback, and I'm taking the kids to soccer practice.
Yep.
But no, that's it's really cool because I was privileged enough to have an advanced copy to check it out, and because it's not your typical tome where it's 500 pages, it's all words, it's a lot, there's pictures, there's it's almost non-linear in some ways where you're kind of going back at certain things, and there's lists and listicles and everything. So it's a really
Really?
cool book in the days where, for the people who are still purchasing books, it's very fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I tried to be because, at the end of the day, maybe I could sell more books if I was just like doing a CPAC tell-all or, something like that.
Yeah.
And, I'm not ruling that out. But, I wanted to write something humorous. And then also, 2025 is the year that Gen Xers, which are generally between 1965 and 1980, will turn 60. So we are middle age. I think I already mentioned to you, you might be transgen, meaning that you might identify as a different generation based on your tastes in
Oh yeah.
music, Halloween costumes.
Oh yeah,
But
I'm a spiritual boomer in some ways, but I'm also like I kind of want to identify as a Zoomer, even though
yeah,
I'm a millennial. I'm of the Harry Potter generation that just real cringe aughts humor and everything. Kind of around the time when humor started dying at the end of the 2000s.
yeah, you're gonna bring it back. Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, when you think about some of the biggest names in comedy and media, like Joe Rogan, Taylor Sheridan, Greg Gutfeld, Adam Carolla. I mean, these are all Gen Xers that grew up in Porky's and Blazing Saddles. time with one hand, one foot in digital, one foot in analog, and they're kind of looking around and being like, what the heck, you know? Oh, they might have stronger language than me, but
You can curse if you want. You're very
But
welcome
yeah,
to.
so just like thinking about 60, and I just turned 48. And as we talked about last time on your podcast, my life, I've basically been able to make it better. And so that's kind of the point, with that underlying humor is just middle age is so much different, I think, now for us than it was for our parents, or at least how we saw our parents. I remember there being over the hill parties with, the tombstones and
And
the
the
black.
walkers and with the
Yeah,
horn
they
on it.
turned 40. I mean, give me a break, right?
Yeah, Lordy, Lordy, so and so is 40, and you're like, oh, you're over the hill and everything. And now it's like, I'm staring at that pretty soon. So yeah, it's definitely interesting because when we talk about the generations, they are marketing terms. Gen X, the Pepsi generation, the Reagan babies, whatever you want to call them, the baby boomers. What is that? Well, it's because of the post World War II baby boom of the soldiers returning home and a lot of kids. The 1950s were a very prosperous time. Millennial turned it into. I don't know really where that came from because we were all born before Y2K, and then Zoomers just happens to be Generation Z, and now you have Gen Alpha, the younger generation. But all of these are just marketing terms. However, it does seem in many ways, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, but it seems like even though you had mentioned Joe Rogan and a lot of big podcasters and big names in media, it seems like Gen X is the forgotten generation. It almost seemed that we skip from boomers to millennials, and Gen X is like, yeah, we're over here just smoking cigarettes in the corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's the meme about just being off to the side, like you say. I think, for boomers, we're kind of sandwiched between two big me generations. So the boomers are like right now, and forever, they've always been kind of an entitlement generation. They have never woken up and not thought they were not owed their Social Security check. And it's not that they're not. I mean, they paid into the system, but I think Gen X and probably millennials as well. Like to me, I think of it for right or wrong, I think of it as a tax. Like I'm not getting that money. If I get some of that money, that's great, but I'd much rather have, control of that money. I mean, back in 2000 when George W. Bush was president, they did a survey that basically asked, would you be willing to give up, they take 12% of their tax, would you be willing to give up the other 10% to have control of 2%? And overwhelmingly, Gen X, especially, because that's was really what was who was working, was willing to give up that 10% just to have control of the 2%. And people were just astonished by that. And that's because we assume we're not getting the 12%.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're giving us 2% back of our money. And then for millennials, I don't think they had that same entitlement mindset that boomers have. I mean, I think they have some healthy cynicism that us, their parents or older brothers and sisters, about government have passed down to them. But I think there are things that I think they do think they're entitled to, um, like having a college degree or an advanced degree mean you're entitled to a high paying job, regardless of what your major was, right? And I think, now we're starting to see Gen Z kind of bouncing or rebelling against that, in that more of them are going into trades. Part of that, I think, is that they're heavily needed. So the salaries are high. And then obviously a big part of that is just education about it from people like Mike Rowe. Um, and also not wanting to accumulate all this student loan debt because prices, have just skyrocketed. I mean, I went to a private liberal arts college that was $8,000, I think, a semester. And I had, you know, uh, my parents had paid into it like from when I was, I don't know, say five. And I was able to parlay some of that toward it and then, make up the difference. But, I always say my only good financial decision is I never took out student loans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's interesting is that you mentioned about with boomers and millennials. I call millennials neo boomers because as a millennial, my parents are boomers.
Mhm.
Whereas Gen X, when they've had kids, they're having Zoomers. So it's a
Mhm.
lot different where you're kind of seeing a little bit of more of that cohesion between Gen X and Z.
Mhm.
and boomers and millennials, even though there's a lot of that infighting that goes on. But I've also seen this with Gen X is it seems like there's two groups of it depending on when you were born. That
Mhm.
my aunt and uncle, my uncle is my godfather, born in '69. He's a Gen Xer. He's kind of that John Hughes type of Gen X, whereas there's more of the grunge, not maybe a little hair metal, but grunge and the alternative of the '90s, and that were raised in using AOL Instant Messenger back in the day. So it really does seem that Gen X is split into those two groups. And I've even heard it argued that there really is no Gen X. The generations don't really matter, that the older generation may as well be boomers. And if you were born after, say, 1975, that you're kind of aligned with the newer generations of millennials and even Zoomers. Do you agree with that assumption at all?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen that, especially with the book title. And anytime I talk about it, it always seems like the people that are always saying generations don't matter and it's all made up, it's always boomers.
Yes, of course.
That kind of is what makes me think, oh, we're on to something. But yeah, I mean, I think it largely depends on what your pop culture, influences were. So I gave a couple exceptions in the book. I mentioned Greg Gutfeld. I think he's 61, but I feel like he's almost like too cool to be a boomer.
Oh, yeah.
But he is a what they call a cusper, right? That's like right on the edge. Like my sister was born in 1981, but most of her pop culture references came from having an older sibling like me. So I count her as a Gen Xer. And then some of the other, random exceptions that I make in the book are if you were born, I can't even remember the date, but like say you're in the military, I feel like you have a little bit more real world experience. Like I kind of don't think as of the vice president as being a millennial. I think of him more as being a Gen Xer.
A little bit,
Um,
yeah.
and then I try to not think about the fact that I'm older than the vice president of the United States. And then another exception is, I think, based on when you got your driver's license and got your first job, because now something like 20% of Gen Zers, or I don't know if they're Gen Alpha yet, but have at 16, only 20% have any intention of getting a driver's license.
Mm.
And that's crazy to me. I mean, that is not wanting that feeling of independence, even regardless of whether you have to work or your parents make you work. Um, I think that not having that need for independence and having everything kind of at your fingertips, whether it's an Uber ride or Uber Eats or the internet, uh, they're growing up a lot different. I mean, it could just mean they don't need the independence, but it also makes their physical circle smaller, but then like their online circle bigger. Like I always notice it on Halloween. I notice fewer and fewer costumes, every year. Like this year, the big one I saw was like I had to look up what it is, but like Demon Slayer. It's like a girl with a long ponytail.
Okay, I've seen that. I saw a lot of the same easy Spirit Halloween costumes where you find the Lorax or
So you
Wednesday
found one
Addams were popular. But yeah, it didn't
for
seem like the
adults?
creativity was there.
Yeah, for adults or for kids?
Um, it depended. I think if you were taking your kids out trick or treating, you're just like, look, I'll wear a costume. I'll just find I'll get a Woody from Toy Story costume. But although I have noticed in millennial generation, the craft beer generation, that they're more excited about Halloween. They got to go to the Halloween party. They have to go to the Halloween themed bar and the Spirit Halloween and everything like that. Uh, and it seemed like for millennials, Halloween overtook New Year's the way boomers did, where boomers are like, hey, we got to get our New Year's tickets. We don't want to be shut out. It's like, it's September 15th. What are you talking about? It's like, no, we got to get on this. We got to get our hotel. We got to get a taxi. We got to get this. And for millennials, it's like, oh, it's New Year's. Oh, that's right. Oh, well, I mean, Dick Clark's dead, but oh, yeah, that's right. I guess it is a new year. Same as the old year, anyways. And it just seemed that all those differences in the generations, though, as I mentioned, that they are marketing terms, but
Mhm.
there are big differences that we have seen. And as you lay out, especially with Gen X.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think Gen X is definitely proud to be Gen X. Millennials at first did not like being called millennials, and I think partly it was because, usually it was because it was a complaint. Like my millennial employees are always talking about their work-life balance or something like that.
You're spending too much on your avocado toast.
Yeah, avocado toast. And now that, they're turning 40, I mean, a lot of them have, rightly so. They're like, stop referring to us as, young people or young millennials, like we're 40 now. They're buying houses, hopefully, or eventually. They're not, the jokes are hitting different about like spending money on avocado toast and coffee being the reason they can't, afford a house. And I think also now they get to join in on dumping on younger generations, and they're having to work with them and kind of seeing some of the same, issues about kids today. No matter what generation you are, you're going to complain about kids today.
It's amazing how much. Oh, yeah, exactly. And I look at how much has changed. Like you said, millennials are 40. Like almost the median age of a millennial now, 1985, is around 40. And when you said Gen X is now reaching senior citizen age at the highest, and in my mind, I'm thinking that like what a lot of people do is they think of millennials as, oh, you're a bunch of broke college kids with your unicorn frappuccinos, and it's like, no, that's the Zoomers you're talking about, and Gen X, not those radical 20 somethings listening to Nirvana. No, those are the ones who are 20 plus years into their career and
Yeah.
looking at retirement at this point. I know Gen Xers who are already retired from being teachers because they've been in the business now for nearly 40 years.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I wish I would have become a teacher. I mean, I probably have a good 20 more to go if I'm gonna stay on the writing path. Unless this book blows up, then, everyone help me retire by
Yeah,
buying
exactly.
a Gen
Please
X.
go buy it. Go buy it. It's available now wherever you get your finer books.
Yep. Sorry.
So, but you had mentioned about J.D. Vance is born 1984, Vivek
Mhm.
Ramaswamy born in 85, that it seems like there's this odd gap. We never had a president born in the 1930s, yet except for Joe Biden, since
Mhm.
1992, we have had a baby boomer president.
Mhm.
It's, Trump 2 terms, Obama born in 61, technically a boomer, Bush, Clinton, both boomers. And it
Mhm.
just seemed that there, like, we haven't even had a Gen X vice president, to my
Mhm.
knowledge. Even Kamala Harris, born 64, technically a boomer.
Yeah.
So it does seem in many ways that though Gen X has found their way into different influential media and mediums, it does seem like in many ways they do get forgotten. And the sentiment, it seems, whether it's from you and from your book or from others, they're fine with that.
Yeah, we don't necessarily want to work for the man. For the
It's Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, and that's what I think is cool though. I mean, there was a few months, early in Trump's administration when, some people were arguing there was a Gen X shadow president, Elon Musk. So,
True.
it's kind of like it's like we dip our toe in, um, but then, kind of find out that power and money are in, other ways. I mean, unless you are, friends with Nancy Pelosi and can get some stock tips. For the most part, uh, they're spending less than the boomers and saving more. I mean, the spending less, I think, is probably because we don't have as high expenses as boomers yet. The millennials are actually saving more than Gen X, and part of me thinks that's because, we didn't have that, bridge of being on cell phone plans and of our parents and, little things like that. But we are starting to save more because, those retirement years are staring staring us down. Um, but the other thing that's kind of interesting is even with retirement, and this is a little bit what we talked about the last time, is Gen Xers also tend to have more of a focus on health, but not for the usual reasons. Like we're not necessarily normalizing like back pain and things like that. We're actually more on the RFK Jr. Maha track in that we're thinking about seed oils and beef tallow and working out and doing various keto and carnivore diets. And I think part of that is growing up with our boomers. I mean, our boomer parents. I mean, I remember, I don't know if this is safe for you, but like the healthiest breakfast you could have if you were to ask a boomer in, say, 1983 was a blueberry or bran muffin. They grew up with that pyramid. You weren't supposed to eat what we now call like healthy fats. You weren't supposed to have red meat. And then that bottom of the pyramid was like, I don't know, 25 servings of whole grains and, you know,
Basically a loaf of
French
bread a day.
bread.
Have bread, so much bread. And
Yeah.
and now bread isn't just, flour and
Yeah. And
it's
now
way more chemicals.
every boomer has type 2 diabetes.
Exactly.
We were having Snackwells as our healthy treat.
I do want to talk about the boomer question because, and you responded to a tweet recently where I was commenting on somebody that had blocked me on there because of talking about this, and it seems like the generation, and I come at this, I do come at it from a point of love because my parents are boomers. I listen to a lot of my playlist is boomer music. It's arena rock, ELO, Springsteen, all that kind of stuff. And I respect my elders. I love hearing stories about them going to concerts, or I was at Kent State actually today and hearing about those stories. Those were boomers in 1970 at May 4th. And I like hearing those. I respect them. But at the same time, there is a there is an animosity that has built up by the younger generations, and I think in many ways deservedly so, that the boomers have left the future generations, multiple, in a worse off place than any time before them. That the country that they inherited, the don't trust anyone over 30, turned into now that I'm 70, I want the world shut down and you can't go out and get your mail without a mask on and your vaccines and all this kind of stuff at that time. And now it's, well, you just need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, son. You need to get a better job. You're just so lazy with your avocado toast and your $9 coffee. And I'm going, did did your talking points expire in 1995? You do realize it's a drastically different country, that honestly, whether anybody likes it or not, it's a demographically changed country than it was from 1973. And it seems that there's a classic quote that's online that says, whenever you're arguing, especially politics, with a boomer, you're arguing with the TV, and the TV cannot talk back to you. They were the first generation that was propagandized by the boob tube. That the nice lady with the teeth and the implants that was telling you something was obviously the truth because they were the first generation raised with that. But I don't know if that propaganda works anymore. And it seems anytime that baby boomers are criticized, they're getting, as the younger generations would say, very butthurt about about this stuff. What do you say about this? Do you think some of the criticism is deserved?
Yeah, I mean, boomers are kind of like the original snowflakes, right? Um, and the other thing I think about, the name, you brought up that it was the baby boom. It was also an economic boom. And in many ways, they were, for some, they were born on, third base. Uh, there have been a lot of articles recently about boomer wealth, and it's going to be that millennials and Gen Xers need to talk to their financial advisors because it's going to be an $83 trillion transfer of wealth from boomers. And it's like, we're not getting that.
No.
That money's going to be spent, and that's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think they don't acknowledge that they were also born in really good, economic times. And, they did experience some really great culture and counterculture and pop culture, and we all respect that. I mean, the 60s and 70s had the biggest bands. I mean, Elvis is right behind me. I mean, I'm a huge Elvis fan and Fleetwood Mac fan. All the 60s, 80s, 90s, and today, or whatever it is, 60s, 70s, 80s, and today fan. And I think that it's okay to have some healthy criticism, but they do seem to take it, so personally. And then also, if the thing that I always found kind of funny, if you talk to a boomer about, counterculture, and you mentioned Kent State, I mean, if you were to believe the lore, I mean, every boomer was at Woodstock, right?
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, they had like 100 million people. And I think part of that is they do want to kind of preserve their good times and that they had an implant on the world, and they definitely did. I mean, certainly uh presidents and elected officials, and obviously giving birth to the greatest generation, Gen X. And I do find that they don't like. any criticism, and it actually never occurred to me, but what you said with being raised with the TV and arguing with them, like, or you're the TV, I guess, when you're arguing with them and can't talk back. They do have more of a healthy dose of I'm older with you. I mean, I kind of always thought the silent generation, their parents almost seem a little more open, maybe your grandparents, in talking to young people. And I remember my grandfather actually bought me Dennis Rodman's book where he was like naked on the back and just thought like, who is this guy? And oh, well, Um, so, I don't know if they're already almost 80, if not 80 by now. I don't know if it's gonna open up for them and they're gonna be a little bit less sensitive about boomer criticism, but I can see how it follows the saying about people don't get mad when you lie about them, people get mad when you tell the truth about them. And I think it's okay if you want to preserve this golden tomb, but you have to be honest that that's why you're doing it.
I think boomers need to reach out to younger generations and listen to their concerns. And it doesn't, when you're telling them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and all these other tropes, these really, really tiresome tropes, it just makes it seem like I don't care. I'm on the back nine. I'm tweeting from my third house in Florida in the hot tub. And you just go, you're not reading the room. I just saw recently Bill Ackman. He posted something really, really cringeworthy about because obviously we hear about these stories that Gen Z, whether it's men or women, are not dating, that the birth rates are completely collapsed, that they're not meeting anywhere. And Bill Ackman's like, well, here's what you do. You go up to a bar and you'd say, hey, can I buy you a drink? And I'm just going, what year is this, Bill? You do realize that if you do that, a girl is going to probably, I don't know, call security and they'll kick you out or throw a drink in your face. That's not how younger people are meeting nowadays. They're doing so through the apps. And if you're somebody who's just going to be like, well, back in my day, we did it this way. Well, sorry, Bill. Sorry, other boomers. It's not like that anymore. And you have to understand why they're frustrated. Why, when jobs are shipped overseas, they're outsourced to Mexico, to China, and then the jobs that are here, people are getting replaced with H-1Bs, and they're concerned about this. And the boomers who are saying, well, no, I'm all in favor of immigration as long as it's legal immigration. Well, the problem is with all of these, younger generations are seeing their tech jobs, their coding jobs, remember, learn to code, they're getting replaced in real time by people who are not from here. And when you're saying that I went to 12 job interviews and I got turned down every time because either my job is going to be replaced by a foreigner or by automation or AI. And if your response is, well, you're just not working hard enough, you need to go to 12 more interviews, you have to listen to their concerns. You can't just thumb your nose at them and go, well, I'm going to be dying soon anyways. Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, times have definitely, changed as far as like, on top of, I know when I was looking for a job, if I were talking to someone older, they would say things, about, because they saw the commercial, like, have you tried Indeed? And it's like you can't, like, that's just a place where, resumes go to die. I hope Indeed's not a podcast sponsor or anything,
No, I don't think anyone should sponsor my podcast anyways.
but it's sponsored by the Gen X Handbook for Middle Age.
That's
Um,
right.
but yeah, I think that they definitely don't understand, and to some degree, even Gen X doesn't. Like I mean, I think we kind of had one foot in analog, one foot in digital. I was never on apps, whether it was because I knew it wasn't going to be, a good fit for me because I, weighed over 300 pounds, at the time when I was dating. Um, but I think to not acknowledge that, times have changed, they just seem to really want to, preserve their golden years. And, they don't like to be reminded that they're not working anymore. I mean, I really have no problem with them spending their wealth and being active. I do wish that a lot of them would lead on some of the RFK Jr. Maha stuff, and look at type 2 diabetes and other health things like, um, you know, back pain and all that by moving more and changing their diet and getting rid of some of their old food pyramid, diet restrictions. They seem to really lean, heavy on pharma and traditional doctors, telling them, not to move as much if they have back pain.
Yeah. It's it's amazing because I just I see that disconnect and it bothers me because even me at 37, I graduated high school in 2006. I'm on my 20-year anniversary coming up, or reunion coming up. And even when I'm graduating high school, it's a different world. Whether it's for dating, whether it's for finding a job, the entry level jobs, and seeing what's really gone on. I went to a community college, and I remember half the girls there, they were studying nursing, but how did they afford that? Well, they did so because they were stripping. Well, strip clubs are closing all over the place because those same girls now are using OnlyFans, and now the gambling is kicked up. So if you're a younger person, you're not getting that job as a dishwasher at a restaurant. You are using Bitcoin. You are putting money on FanDuel or DraftKings or something. And it's just, it's so different now. And to just close your eyes, be blinded by this, and say, well, we did it my way and it's my way or the highway, just seems just so. It's just so out of touch. And I'm urging baby boomers who are listening to this, first of all, buy Lisa's book. Second, if you are listening, just talk to your grandkids. First of all, actually talk to them. Not do what apparently Simon Cowell says. He has $600 million. He's giving it all away to charity because he doesn't think his kids earned it. Sorry, or
But
Jeff Goldblum is doing the same thing.
he jerks. Do you know Simon Cowell's kids?
No, I don't. No. Yeah, but it's so weird that that's I don't know. It just seems that that's such boomer mindset to me. And so again, I'm when I go on these diatribes, they're from love. I'm not just sitting there doing that okay boomer with the Bernie Sanders shirt on. I'm doing so because I think we all need to have these discussions in a society where you don't even know your own neighbors anymore, where younger kids were kept out of school for a couple of years, and now they don't know how to talk to other people. They have these dopamine and serotonin rushes because of looking at their phones. And just recently, I saw the trailer for Toy Story 5. And it really probably is the end of Toy Story because kids don't play with toys anymore. They're on screens. And if you're just going to thumb your nose at these people and not listen to their concerns, then you're going to get more hate and people saying that, hey, maybe it's time for the day of the pillow.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of me wonders if they kind of have the same problem that, their grandkids have, and that they're spending too much time online or with media. So TV or a website, whether it's news websites or news cable news or something like that. And, they're not really participating in the real world, whereas millennial and Gen X, are just because we have to, because most of us, might have a workplace or, have some other, form of community that we work to be in. If it's, if you still keep in touch with, high school or college friends, that kind of thing. But I think definitely what you say is right, that I think the key for boomers is participating more uh in life with grandkids or kids, and kind of recognizing that, you know, I think they just don't like to be told that they had it good. They like to brag that they had it good. You can't talk to a boomer without them telling you what they paid for their house and what it's worth now.
Yeah,
Um,
but also at the time they're like, well, do you remember the conditions in the late 70s when Jimmy Carter was president? And
you're
yeah,
not-
we got conscripted into the Vietnam. And again, I understand those concerns, but you also again bought a home for $40,000 in many ways and flipped it for 600,000 because you were using your home, your real estate as a moneymaker, which again, I'm fine with. I'm okay with. That's capitalism, but uh, it's yeah,
so,
again, those concerns.
they also convinced, all of their kids that the key to success was a 4-year degree, including signing student loans and things like that. So, a kid certainly could have said no, thank you, but and there was a time when, that kind of a 4-year degree in normal stuff, like say business administration or, whatever, did lead to a pretty good job. But, they had things that were a lot more normal for them, like 401ks and pensions and those types of things. And uh, they were kind of the last generation where that was a normal thing. And that's because they were getting them because their salaries, weren't as high. Whereas now, I think a six-figure salary is more normal, but it doesn't really come with anything but health insurance.
Yeah, it's yeah. Even when I was in school, this is when I noticed that things were changing because everyone in my class, when you're in your now in your 30s, but back in the aughts, it was you got to go to college. Where do I go? It doesn't matter. Go. Get your degree. What am I majoring in? Doesn't matter. Could be general studies. As long as you get your degree, you're in. Because if you don't go to college, you're going to end up working at McDonald's. Then after 2008, it turned into, okay, yeah, you have a college degree, but what? You're too good to work at McDonald's? And I'm going, wait, what? The rug just pulled out from under us in 2 years. What the heck happened?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely, a good point. And at many you've already been replaced, with a screen, right? Um, they always they brag about, I went through college and waited tables at night. It's like, well, now all that food's coming via Uber Eats. Waiting tables is not a guarantee that you'll make good money anymore, uh during college.
And
Uh
even being a bartender now, because now that people are doing gummies, I remember talking to a bartender at a place nearby, and I said, how's business? And she said, it's terrible. So why? You usually had great customers. And I said, yeah, we used to have a lot of baby boomers. It's not just young people who are doing this. Baby boomers who would come in and have 4 or 5 beers after golf and they're watching the game. Now what they do is they come in for one drink, they pop an edible, so by the time they get home, it kicks in, and then they're in La La Land. And so even that's changed. So again, all of this is all of those talking points that we have heard for now decades are really turning obsolete in very quick time. And that's why I think I'm not trying, and I know you're not either, trying to rip on boomers like, oh, you got to get with the program. But I think it has to be a constructive conversation that needs to be had. And that question needs to be out there by saying that, like you said, talk to your grandkids, talk to your kids, see what's going on, because otherwise, if you're going to keep your head in the sand and wait until it's time, then I don't think it's really helping matters in society.
yeah, I mean when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be talking about how much you made on your house that you bought for $40,000. But I mean, I think the book is kind of probably like similar advice for boomers, and that's that it's not, too late. I mean, it's not too late to make your life better, whether it's your health or
Wait, you
your
mean
look.
this book that's here on the screen?
Yeah, that book.
You mean
And
the book that's made into pillow form behind you?
anything I can do, because I noticed that the book itself was too far away, so I'm like, I'll put it on a pillow.
That's great. So actually, I wanted to transition a little bit away from the boomers and talk about the younger people. So we talked Gen X, we've talked millennial, but again, millennial, like I said, is neo boomer. A lot of we've been dealing with these concerns.
Yeah.
So with you being a part of CPAC for all these years, and I remember, I grew up with my dad loved. Well, my dad voted for Bob Dole, but he didn't like Bob Dole. He liked Jack Kemp. He's like, oh, Jackie Kemp. Oh, what a great guy. I love Jack Kemp. And we were Rush babies, listen to Rush Limbaugh every day. And then all the other Michael Savage, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Hugh Hewitt, Dennis Prager, Michael Medved, all of those. Frequent
Oh,
rotation in my house. I didn't listen to a lot of music growing up. I listened to a lot of AM talk radio. Um, so I remember as a right of center child growing up in this time that it was uncool to be a Republican, a young Republican, that they were this stuffy, erudite Buckleyites with their blue sport coat with the lapel and the emblem on it and the khakis. And they just, oh, yes, oh, but, I was reading here and the definition of what it means to be a conservative. And they just seem like, oh, what, have you ever had sex before? Have you ever smoked weed? Did you ever do cocaine? You're missing out, man. And it seemed like in the around that time when you were a part of CPAC that there was a little bit of a change in that conservative movement. And this is where I kind of transition into talking about Charlie Kirk, that you saw it from that time of the old school Republican, more of like the Harvard, the Ivy League type of college Republicans, to it kind of being cool, almost counterculture to be on the right. And then now we are entering a new phase where you're seeing more of the Nick Fuentes types that have taken over this conservative movement. We're seeing, as we record this, a lot of infighting. It has a lot to do about Israel and about Epstein and all this kind of stuff. So what do you think about the state of conservatism, con Inc., some people would call it, as to what's going on, especially now in the wake of someone like Charlie Kirk, who I didn't know his game. I really didn't. I knew of Charlie Kirk, but the only people I knew who liked him were college kids or boomer moms who would listen to his radio show. I'm a guy who was 5, 6 years older than Charlie Kirk, wasn't really in my wheelhouse. So I didn't really get a chance to truly appreciate him until after he passed. And I didn't realize what a communicator he was with these opinions, with this having a direct communication to the president. And now everybody seems very rudderless. And there was a lot of infighting and group chats and everything. So, long way of saying this. What do you think about the state of conservatism, especially ones under 40 at this time?
Yeah, first let me start with what I think kind of when it changed for CPAC and then also for conservatives being the rebels. And most of that I think is that they're teachers. For me, it was high school teachers, and then college professors. They're liberals. So it's like if you're a liberal in college, you're like, oh, I agree, teacher. It's like let me stay and clean the eraser or clean the erasers and polish your apples. And so I think that's kind of the when it became a rebellion. I mean, my first job out of college was traveling with conservative speakers like Ann Coulter, Michelle Malkin, Christina Hoff Sommers, traveling with them to college campuses where we needed, heavy security. Even for someone like Christina Hoff Sommers, that's just like boys are boys, girls are girls, and who is, by her account, a feminist. So then when I went to CPAC, originally it was around 2,600 people, and coming from that campus activism as an adult, not while I was in college. I was too busy pulling myself up by the bootstraps and working. But I was able to kind of bring that activism and CPAC being like the central event for college kids. And we ended up having over, half of the attendees by the time I left at, 12,000 attendees, over half were college students. And I think for years before that, the media could cover CPAC and cover it as like an old white male, female, with the elaborate flag hats and things. But when you have over half of them being rambunctious, being at CPAC, being young, not all of them looking like, Alex P. Keaton, you just can't ignore that. And I think that's when the tide, changed as far as how young conservatives were covered. The girls were dressing up and they were pretty, and some of them maybe thought they were there to find husbands. Others just thought they were there to, party and meet people. Nothing wrong with that. And then, by the time I was gone at CPAC, which I think it's funny to remember, there were still plenty of boomers and old school conservatives in charge, because the reason I was, fired by the board of CPAC, which I'll mention, to my knowledge, it's all different people now. So this isn't a reflection of CPAC now. I was fired for two reasons: having the gays and having Donald Trump. So that's obviously worked out well for me, and the party.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I was right, I guess. I can hang my hat on that. And then when it comes to Charlie Kirk, when he was murdered, I wrote an article called "I Didn't Know Charlie Kirk," and the reason I think that's a positive is because I'm old. He was, like you said, speaking to college kids, and I think for the older adults that like him, I think it probably gave them hope. When they look at, things being terrible now, seeing someone like Charlie Kirk gave them hope for, conservatives, maybe for the future in general. And, I'll admit, oftentimes I saw, some of his tweets or, a clip, and I'm just like, that's so basic. I mean, obviously, he would, if he would say something, like, is this from the Journal of Duh? But, he was not talking to me or you. He was talking to kids that are just dipping their toe into, conservatism and freedom in general. And I think that we have to remember when we hear anyone talk, whether it's, political or, on the fringes, they're not talking to us or even to, a big group. And it's always been the case that the leftist media will elevate people that will divide us. So whether that is Nick Fuentes or any pick someone
Candace
that
Owens and yeah,
at
Steve
the time
Bannon.
of escaping, it's Tucker Carlson. Who knew? Um, So I think that's the thing that we have to keep in mind. I mean, are these people talking to a large group? Are they talking to an online group? Are they talking to bots, that are, elevating them because, another entity is trying to divide us? So I think we just have to when it comes to those people on, either side, I guess a year or two ago it was Andrew Tate. So I don't even know who are going to be the controversial people, um, you know, on December 11. So
Well,
I
I
guess
guess I guess we'll see when they have the Turning Point conference that comes up
which one?
because the Turning Point in Arizona, the one in because I know Jack Posobiec is kind of he straddled both of those worlds where he's gone on Tucker, but he also will go on more mainstream stuff as well. And it's interesting because I look at how much that changed, like you mentioned about CPAC, that it had a nerd prom feel to it pre-Trump. But for me, as somebody who was my first presidential election that I voted, I held my nose and voted for John McCain. 2 years prior, I saw John McCain give the commencement speech at Ohio State University, and he sat there talking about, my friends, we need to support the people of Darfur. And I looked at my dad, going, "Are you kidding me? This guy's going to run for president?" And he did, and I'm like, "Ugh, I have no choice because I don't want to vote for Obama." I was a little bit brainwashed at the time of being 20 about Ron Paul, thinking, oh, this guy's a lunatic. Then by 2012, I said, yeah, I am a Ron Paul guy. I don't care if it's considered throwing away my vote. I'm not voting for Mitt Romney. We already went through a Tea Party movement, and what did we get out of it? We got Mitt Romney. So I said, the Republican Party, this is my thinking, what now, 13 years ago, has to be crushed in many ways, and there has to be another way. That's where I started going down the rabbit hole of libertarianism and reading Mises and reading Rothbard and listening to Tom Woods and Frederick Bastiat and all these other thinkers. And a lot of that changed when I saw a certain orange guy come down a golden escalator in 2015. And a lot of that Pat Buchanan, Sam Francis, more of the what it means to be a true conservative. You started seeing a little more of that conservative, that paleo conservative populism crop up because it seemed to me at the time, and in many ways, the neoconservatives they scratched and clawed and fought. And their way lost for a bit, but it seems like there's a little bit of that creeping back in. They're waiting out this Trump, this MAGA movement, and who knows? We'll get to good old fashioned 2012 republicanism, Rick Santorum and Paul Ryan again, and go, guys, I thought that we defeated this in 2016 and in 2020 and in 2024, and yet you want to bring this on back. So there is a definite splintering of the right, and I don't think any of this infighting right now, though I think there needs to be questions, and I think it's good to have these discussions because I believe the left is very lockstep. If they're told who to vote for, doesn't matter what side, they'll go out and vote for him or her or they them whatever. And but on the right there is a lot of that infighting, but now it's getting very personal, and it's splintering the party to the point where it seems to me that the midterms are not going to go in the right's direction next year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what bothers me, it's not that I don't think infighting is healthy, but it's like we are always the ones disavowing. Has anyone disavowed Mom Donnie? I mean, where are we having the discussion about anti-Semitism, which is very, very real, and they're not when it's so much more prevalent on their side. Ours is online talk,
Yeah, it's
you
just
know?
ideological. Like you're talking about a people that are discussing genocide and from the river to the sea, and we're over here because, somebody said a naughty thing in a group chat, and yet for whatever reason, the right wants to cancel their own people.
Yeah.
People on the right have decided, no, we don't need radicals in our party. Well, who defines what a radical is? Whereas the left gets theirs promoted to high positions of power.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I don't know. I'm not monetized on Twitter, but a lot of or X, but I kind of feel like a lot of this happened with monetization and
Rage
just
bait.
more the more outrageous you could be, the more engagement that you got, that's when a lot of this seemed to start, that when everyone's an edgelord, in their what they think is a private text or, something like that. And it's not a free speech issue to me. It's just monetizing being outrageous. I mean, I have no idea what a lot of these people, with millions of followers on podcasts and on social media, I have no idea what they think. I just know they get paid for an engagement, and it doesn't matter if it's someone disavowing you or someone you or a bot saying "way to go." Um, so it just really bothers me though that the anti-Semitic action is on the left and no one talks about it, or besides us, right? I mean, they literally at Columbia had people blocking Jewish students from going to into buildings to, getting an education. Does this sound familiar to anyone?
Exactly.
I grew up in the South, and obviously, I've been talking about being old, but I'm not that old. But we all learned those history lessons. Maybe fewer are learning those history lessons. But I guess I'm. It's not that I'm not bothered by um, the infighting or the radicals, which gets defined in various directions. I mean, I was a radical for allowing a gay group. Some people are radical because they think it's okay for David Rubin to adopt children. Um, I don't happen to believe that. I think there are bigger fish to fry, when it comes to, conservatives, or the conservative movement. I think in general, having Donald Trump have us become less, pearl clutchers. I mean, what are you going to do? The guy has been married several times, but somehow he still seems to be a better legislating conservative than a lot of, the Santorums and Romneys.
Yeah. It's so fascinating that we've now spent how much time focusing on group chats, and you say, well, no, here's the problem is because we have a Nazi problem in our party and this and that, and it's like, again, these are what's the purpose of a group chat? The,
Who's the
the
most powerful Nazi
Yeah,
on the
exactly. What's the purpose? Why do we even have group chats? Is because we don't have men's only spaces anymore. That you can't have a men's club, you can't have Augusta National, no women or blacks or Jews or whatever it is. You can't have those. We don't have that freedom of association. So yes, people will decide, okay, well then we'll just post a bunch of edgy Pepe the Frog memes on a group chat and tell racist jokes or something. And you say, yeah, it's not great, but is this what we're really doing? Well, while Mamdani, who is I don't care as much about his faith, his Muslim faith, in the fact that he's more of a communist in the largest economic place in the entire country, and all that stuff trickling down, and free buses and government-owned grocery stores and stuff. I'm more concerned about the fact that the guy's a commie, and yet it seemed that we spent all this election cycle trying to browbeat each other on our thoughts on Israel, whether you love it and you think that we should fight wars for them, or you think that we need to be more America first, whatever the case is. They just sabotaged the right on both whether it's the Groyper Fuentes side or the Mark Levin Ben Shapiro side. It's just going after each other instead of realizing what the moment we're in. We just had one of our own people murdered in 4K in front of college kids in Utah just a couple of months ago, and here we are trying to cancel each other out because Tucker called the Pharisees and the Sadducees the hummus eaters in Jesus's time, and ever since then it's just been the butting of heads. And I think a discussion like this, just like with the boomer question, is healthy. But when it gets very personal and it gets conspiratorial, that's when you realize you're not understanding the moment, and it doesn't seem like you're taking the moment we're living in seriously.
Yeah, and also when a lot of the conspiratorial and just asking questions, um, is a way for podcasts to get views, which is fine. I don't know if I said anything to help you get views. I'll have to keep thinking about it. Um, but
All I'm thinking is dollar signs at this point, Lisa.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm not. The thing is like what's controversial? I mean, maybe I already did by calling you transgen. Um,
I think this is the controversial thing is I have a Donald Trump bobblehead. Although he was supposed to hold an American flag, I don't know what happened to it, so now I just pretend he's about to do a dance, his
You know
Trump
that
dance.
when he was hugging the flag, that was at CPAC.
That's right. Yeah, it was. Was that
But
when also he was holding the LGBTQ flag? Was that CPAC as well, or was that something else?
that was not at CPAC. That was during the campaign.
Okay.
Yeah. Because actually my one of my best friends, well, ended up becoming my best friend, despite his role in getting me fired. He was the head of Go Proud, which extended the invitation to Trump to come to CPAC. And him and I believe Rick Grinnell started LGBT for Trump. And so at the 20, let's see, was it 2016? I'm losing track of time. 20, so the 2016 election, like fun fact, the first party to get the or like literal party at the convention to get the Trump Pence sign, like hot off the press, was LGBT for Trump, because we had the first party. Um, or I say we, but
Oh, you honestly
not me.
you really are like the Forrest Gump of the new
Yeah.
conservatism.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's funny. I've actually said that. Because I've kind of just been in the background, which is also, I think, a testament to for Gen Xers of like how much you can really get done if you don't care about who gets the credit for it, you know?
Yeah, what are you doing this for? Are you doing it for your own benefit and for clicks and engagement, or are you doing this for the love of the game? We talked about it last time, but I went back and watched the Rush Limbaugh 2009 speech at CPAC. Outside of Pat Buchanan's culture war, when you talk about great speeches, that is right up there. The Rush thing, I watched it live. I think I have a tweet from 2009. It was February of '09, and remembered saying, sorry, not doing anything. Don't no calls today. I'm watching Rush at CPAC, and sure enough, you're next to him on the stage.
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting there on the stage with him. I mean, I was definitely a Rush baby. Um, in my introduction of Rush, when he came on the stage, I talk about the I became a conservative in the backseat of a car because a boy I liked invited me to listen to Rush, during lunchtime. The backseat of the car was, just for effect. We literally just listened to Rush Limbaugh in the car. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that what was really important for that year because Obama had just won 2008. Everybody in the media expected it to be a very gloom and doom CPAC. And what was so great of having Rush's voice there, and also I think why a lot of people miss Charlie Kirk and lots of people are clamoring to be the next Charlie Kirk is Rush did the complete opposite of what the media expected and gave this big, hour and a half long hopeful speech. Um, and, just being able to be part of that movement and, especially seeing how mad it made the media that people were cheering and leaving in a good mood, was just amazing. And there certainly is a void that maybe I didn't understand at first with, Charlie Kirk. I think we're seeing that he had a lot of positivity in his message. It wasn't the typical, boomer message of conservatism is, talking about the debt ceiling and this and how much debt the US has racked up and spending and this and that. It's that, now infamous tweet about, start a family, find joy, that sort of thing. And I think that's particularly speaking to a new generation of young males that seem to have been left behind. They're not being told they're girl bosses and, all that. They're basically being told that they're not going to have jobs that they're going to be looked at as sexual predators if they ask a girl on a date, at a bar. And Charlie Kirk, I think, was very unique in being able to speak to those younger males that, were being forgotten, not just by you know, politics, but I think by culture.
Yeah, and there was a pragmatism to it because it felt like some of the other more Fox News type of personalities that would go on the radio and rant and rave, but it just seemed like it was very reactionary. It was reactionary and go buy my book is what it seemed like. And I would listen to Bill O'Reilly and I would watch him and stuff, and he would rant about the liberals, and then, hey, I have a new book. It's called, Killing Oswald or whatever, all the killing books that he was
Yeah.
doing. And it just seemed like I just heard you rant and rave for an hour, and I didn't come away other than just being angry. And that's what I liked about what Charlie Kirk was doing was he's not just rage baiting. He's a guy he was a good Christian man, a father, a husband who he didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't curse. I never heard Charlie Kirk even say damn or hell at all, unless he's talking about going to hell, that kind of stuff. So he was a great messenger that I didn't realize that we had. And I think going forward for people on the right, it should be more instead of us just ranting about boomers and ranting about the kids, the groypers. It's we have to find some type of solution to come away with this. Otherwise, we're just again rage baiting. And are we rage baiting for clicks and engagement and money, or are we just or what? What's the case? Are we grifting? Who's going to be the next Charlie Kirk? There's is going to be no Charlie Kirk, but there's this still race for it because it seems like I'm going to be the Temu version of Charlie Kirk now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like who's going to be, for a couple of months after Rush Limbaugh, there was that void, and people were like, who's going to be the next Rush Limbaugh? And we now found out there is not going to be one. I don't know who the big, radio host is, and now it doesn't even
Well,
really.
Buck and Clay filled in, and they have purposely said, and they said, I think every show, that we are not replacing Rush Limbaugh. We just took his time slot, but there is no replacement. They played some clips. I even got a chance to talk to Clay a couple of years ago. He was doing a book signing, and I was saying that I'm like, it's got to be the toughest job to
Yeah.
have. You want to follow that golden EIB microphone? Boy.
Yeah, I mean, and this isn't, I mean, it's kind of like depressing to think about, but my husband says he thinks the closest thing to Rush because it's someone that makes you think, and is kind of must-see TV for him, or video or audio for him, is Scott Adams, doing
For
his
now.
take. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's kind of depressing to think about. That's why there's a chapter in my book about grief. And Goonies never say die. But yeah, I mean, I think at some point they'll come to terms, whether it's, a young guy who is giving speeches, or and is getting some traction because, he has good donors or is part of a group with good donors. I can't remember his name, but I know he got got dragged for being on a private, doing his video from a private plane.
Oh,
And
Brylan Hollyhand. That's that 19-year-old that looks like he was created in some lab.
yeah.
And that's okay, but you got to get away from the talking points there. But yeah, no, it's somebody to pick up the mantle and see what's going on. Could it be Jack Posobiec? Could it be you and I? don't know. Who knows what's going on? But it has to happen organically. You can't just throw a bunch of money at some rich kid from the South who kind of looks like a young Peyton Manning, and it's like, hey, fellow kids, I'm doing a speech, and you're on a private plane. It just seems that you're again not understanding the moment. So. But I mean, all of this just is factoring in and finding some type of solution. And by the way, Lisa, before I let you go, speaking of solutions, a couple of years ago on the podcast that we were referencing that I had you on, we talked about your weight loss journey. You lost 170 pounds, and I know you've gone through surgeries and stuff like that, but I also see your videos on Instagram of you working out and doing weight training or any kind of fitness. What I did want to ask you about is this rise in Ozempic, because when you say it says in the description for your book, it says how I lost 170 pounds the right way. Well, I just saw Amy Schumer the other day, and she lost a lot of weight. She has the Ozempic face. Megan Trainor, I'm all about that bass, no treble. And there she is. She's rail thin. And there's all these others. Lizzo did so. Lisa Lampanelli, a lot of other large women. And it kind of seems that the body positivity movement died when Ozempic started becoming normalized. So, what are your thoughts on Ozempic, the it being used as the miracle drug right now?
Yeah, I mean, I can say from experience. Also, the name of the chapter is How to Lose 170 Pounds the Easy Way, and that's because for many people, they consider, having gastric bypass a cheat. And so then I'm a cheater, but I know I'm going to live longer. So when it comes to Ozempic, like I said, I can say this from experience. I have been on a GLP-1, a semaglutide, and it doesn't fix everything. I still, work out. I still, eat right. If you don't eat right, that's when have side effects from what I've heard. But I, have not changed did not change my healthy behavior just because, prior to my plastic surgery, you know, my gastric bypass surgeon had suggested a GLP-1, before going through skin removal surgery. So to me, I just think that the obesity problem is so great in the country that I don't think if something is prescribed, not, some of these compounded things, if something is prescribed by a doctor, and you're able to manage it, I wouldn't say anything is cheating because regardless, it's heavy, or it's hard. It's hard and heavy. The other thing, when it comes to some of the other side effects like Ozempic face, I mean, I have Ozempic face because I've lost weight. I mean, it droops. The other side effect I had heard was loose skin. Well, that's what happens when you lose a lot of weight. Um, but I would say that it's not. Um, something that should be a substitute for, exercising or eating right. Because at the end of the day, you still need more muscle mass, especially as get older. Um, and, you still need to eat right because you still want to have good nutrition and, you don't want to have any of those gastric side effects that some people have. But yeah, you're right. I think it definitely did expose that at the end of the day, the healthy at any size body positivity was, a hoax. And when given the choice, most people want to be healthy. I mean, maybe you could say most people want to be thin, but at the end of the day, I think we need to say most people want and should be healthy.
Yeah, it
It's easy to have body positivity and say healthy at any size when, you're 20 and 300 pounds. It's not as easy when you're 30 or like me, 40 and over 300 pounds.
I remember in 2021 when when everybody lost their collective minds, and I saw a magazine cover that said this is healthy, and it was a woman who was morbidly obese. And
Yeah,
to
doing
say that healthy is in the eye of the beholder and whatever, and this was again during the time where we all need to get vaccinated because we need to get through this and all that. And Bill de Blasio is eating burgers and fries and saying, "What? If you eat these fries, you can get these free if you get vaccinated." And Krispy Kreme Donuts was giving out donuts for a year or whatever. And I'm thinking, no, we're not learning the right lessons over this.
well, and
And
don't
then,
forget, they closed the gyms.
yeah, they closed the gyms but kept the liquor stores and the weed dispensaries open because and the churches and everything else like that. But you got to keep certain things open. And it was a weird time of where we decided to play pretend. We played pretend. Don't believe your lying eyes that this woman who's here, who's 600 pounds, is saying, I'm healthy. And we're all supposed to go, yeah, yeah, you are. Now, I'm not going to rip on that person, but I'm just going to say that you can't you can't lie to me and say that's a good thing. And yet those people are the ones now that are doing the Ozempic, and now they're losing all this weight, and it really has put the final etching on the tombstone of the body positivity movement. It I think officially when I saw Amy Schumer looking like Amy Smart or Amy Adams, you go, oh boy, we're done here, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I kind of like about her story, which, I could never do, since you mentioned the Rush Limbaugh, and I think I'm still on Donald Trump's Wikipedia, is Amy Schumer deleted all her old fat photos. Although she was never that fat. I don't think. I mean,
No, and she also had a kid, so and she documented her journey of having the child and trying to get the weight off, and then now she takes Ozempic, and it's like, yeah, there you go.
Mhm. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's weird, as a former fat or obese person, the whole thing about body positivity is that it's a catch-22 because at the end of the day, you have to love yourself enough to think that you deserve a better life and, a healthy life, and that it's worth doing uncomfortable things, to get that. And, when I got surgery, like that, I remember, a couple of days before, I kind of went into it thinking, if something happens to me, if I die in my 40s um or whatever, at least my parents and my loved ones, my friends will know I did the ultimate thing. I tried. And that week I actually went to my first Bible study. Had already become a Christian, but I went to my first Bible study and there was a verse from Deuteronomy that was from Moses, basically saying, I've put before the light and dark, blessing and cursing, therefore choose life. And that was the time when it really clicked in my head. I'm not doing this as, a last minute thing for death. I'm now deciding that I'm worth it and I want to live. I want to choose life. And so that's what's always kind of bothered me about it being called body positivity. Um, is it really should be called, to motivate people, I think, to be healthy. I mean, it, should be positivity about yourself as a person, as someone that God's created, if you, believe in God. And, I'm just happy that some people that maybe may have been part of that movement, so Amy Schumer, Lizzo, they're now realizing that the thing that biology is catching up with them, and that's like if they want to have children, they need to lose weight. If they want to be there for their children, they need to lose weight.
Yeah, and also I should point out for the record, if you are somebody who goes to the gym and you take pictures of someone who's overweight, and you're making fun of them, you're an asshole. I'm just saying that right now. I saw this recently, and somebody was taking a picture or a video of a woman, heavy set woman who was on a chin up bar, and it kind of creaked when she went on top of it, and I'm going, this that's not helping. But I got to say though, at gyms, for anybody who's listening to this who is trying to get back into shape, when you do go to a gym, could there be one jackass who would do that? They're not going to do that publicly, but most people, if not everybody who goes to a gym, they're happy that you're there.
Yeah.
You're happy, and if you have questions, you want some training. What do I need to do as far as cardio or something to help my back or what have you? They're more than happy to help. And I think that's another thing. You want to talk about body positivity? How about that positivity of reinforcing the fact that if you're trying to help yourself, there are people who are willing to help you. So, kind of making it full circle with this, it is a way of being proactive instead of reactive. And I think that's just how I feel, and that's why I'm happy for what you're doing with your story, not just with the book, but just your overall story of on Substack and posting pictures of yourself and holding yourself accountable, and I think is excellent. And I think and it not only is it excellent, it's admirable that to do that. And I would encourage more people to do that, and myself included.
Yeah. Yeah. Another quote, aside from Moses, was also from Greg Gutfeld, who did a PragerU video where he basically said, uh, exercising is like being a conservative. I mean, it's kind of a bootstraps thing, but this might be his boomer side coming out. Exercise is one of those things where if you put in the deposit, you'll, get the reward. And so I think especially when people are not sure what's going on, when they're wanting some sort of type of control on their life, certainly working out and getting control of your health is a great way to, get that handle, on life when the world is encouraging infighting and AI is taking us to places we don't know yet.
Yeah, making ourselves worthwhile because everybody is worth something, and you want to find what your purpose is. Well, if there is a purpose out there, it's for you, it's to go out and buy Lisa's book, and Lisa painstakingly has compiled this. It's honestly it's a great book. It's a lot of fun. You don't just have to be Gen X. In fact, I think almost anybody but Gen X should also read this as well, because now you get to learn about that lost, forgotten generation who is now again entering senior age at the highest, the eldest of boomer, or I mean of Gen Xers. But my guest Lisa D. Pasquale, congratulations on another book, and congratulations on your weight loss journey, and thank you once again for coming on the Check Your Brain podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And thank you for listening to the Check Your Brain podcast. I'll be back with you next week with another free episode, whether it's on Rumble, YouTube, or Twitter, or Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you want more from me, why would you? But go over to Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur, TonyMazur. You can subscribe for free. You're just only going to get one free podcast per week, which is the one you are listening to. The rest of it, the good stuff, is behind a paywall. Sorry about that, but it's $3 a month. Who cares? So, or don't. It's fine. You can listen to the free content. Thank you, everybody. I'll be back next week, and have yourselves a good one. And buy Lisa's book. Bye now.